My name is Elias Mercer, 33 years old. I grew up believing that even if the world shifted under my feet, my mother would always be the one place that stayed still. It's strange how confidently children build their entire understanding of safety around a single person, only to learn later that people change faster than any circumstance ever could. My mother had me when she was barely 20, still trying to figure out who she was in the world. My biological father left before I was even born, a short-lived relationship, a bitter breakup, and a promise to never speak again. She always said she didn't want his money or involvement. Back then, I admired her for that. I imagined a strong, unstoppable woman raising me with raw determination, choosing dignity over resentment. What I didn't know as a child was that dignity could coexist with weakness, and that weakness could one day choose convenience over love. We survived because my grandparents stood in the gap for both of us. Their house always smelled like old wood and simmering broth, and they treated me like the center of their universe. My mother worked, studied, dated a few men. I didn't question any of it. She was my mother. I was her boy. It felt simple. Then Harry entered our lives. He wasn't a bad guy, not at first. He and my mom had worked together, and when they started dating, I caught her smiling in ways I hadn't seen before. For a while, our house carried a peaceful hum dinners that didn't feel rushed weekends with board games, small jokes shared across the table. Harry wasn't a father figure, not exactly, but he treated me with polite neutrality, sometimes even warmth. I didn't ask for more. But slowly, so slowly, I didn't realize it for years, my mother shifted. It started with little things. Me asking a question and her responding with a sigh instead of an answer. Her laughter becoming sharper, emptied of softness. Harry making more decisions than she did while she quietly adjusted herself around him. By the time they got married, the air had changed. It wasn't cold, just thinner, like the oxygen had been reduced, and I was the only one suffocating. 4 years passed, and then she got pregnant. Her excitement was blinding. I remember standing in the corner of the room during the announcement, my mother crying into Harry's chest while he held her face with both hands. I clapped, but the moment felt like watching something from outside a window, like I was already outside the family picture they were creating. Still, I told myself families grow, not replace. I tried to help. I tried to be present, supportive, useful. She brushed me off more than once. Not now, Elias. Can you not hover? You're stressing me out. Small cracks, but every crack is a warning before the collapse. The twins were born and immediately became the sun around which every conversation, every decision, every breath revolved. Late nights, feeding schedules, diaper rotations. Harry and my mother took turns caring for them, while I lingered on the edges, unsure where I fit anymore. 6 months later, they called me downstairs for a serious conversation. Something in the air felt wrong. Harry sat stiffly, hands clasped. My mother looked like she had been rehearsing lines in her head, polishing them until they sounded almost reasonable. She told me gently, too gently, that things were difficult. Money was tight. Resources were limited. They were exhausted. The house was too full. They needed peace, stability, room to breathe. But it was the next line that carved itself into my memory like a scar. Elias, the twins deserve our focus right now. Not need, deserve. I felt something crack inside me, a small fragile belief that had barely kept me upright for years. They didn't say, "We don't want you." They didn't have to. My mother kept talking something about saving money, about planning for the twins' future, about how independent I already was at 16. She said it all with a tone that sounded almost proud, as if pushing me out of the nest early was an achievement worth celebrating. I tried to suggest solutions: a part-time job, cutting expenses. I told them I didn't want to leave. My voice trembled, which embarrassed me, but I couldn't stop it. My mother's expression hardened just slightly. "It's not about what you want, Elias. It's what's best for everyone." Everyone didn't include me. I left that night with a backpack and a numbness that felt too big for my body. They didn't tell me where to go. They didn't even walk me to the door. Harry patted my shoulder. My mother didn't hug me. Her eyes slid past me, already drifting back toward the nursery upstairs. I walked to my grandparents' house under a streetlight flickering like a dying heartbeat. When my grandmother opened the door and saw my face, she didn't ask anything. She just pulled me into her chest, the way mothers are supposed to. I didn't cry until later in the quiet of their guest room, staring at the ceiling that had watched me grow up. I covered my mouth with both hands because even then, even abandoned, I didn't want to make noise that would burden someone. I told myself it was temporary, that she would come to her senses, that mothers don't stop loving their children, they just forget sometimes. But deep down, something already knew the truth. I hadn't been pushed out because they couldn't afford to keep me. I'd been pushed out because they didn't want me. That was the night I lost my place in the family I once believed was permanent. And I had no idea it was only the beginning of what they would one day take from me. I stayed with my grandparents after that night, and even though their small house always felt warm, I carried a coldness inside me that didn't thaw for years. They didn't push me for details. They didn't demand explanations. My grandmother simply made me food. My grandfather asked about school, and they let me exist without conditions. It was the first time in months I felt seen. But safety with them came with a quiet pressure. They were old tired in the way people get when life has stretched them too thin. Their hands trembled sometimes when they passed me plates. Their knees cracked when they got up from the couch. I knew they couldn't support me forever, and the shame of being the extra burden replayed in my head, even though they never once made me feel unwelcome. Every other weekend, my mother and Harry visited with the twins. I'd be in the living room doing homework or helping my grandmother fold laundry, and they would arrive with diaper bags, stroller wheels, clattering soft baby clothes, rustling as they walked in like a cheerful, complete family. My mother greeted my grandparents warmly. She kissed the twins' foreheads with such tenderness that it almost hurt to watch. When her eyes finally landed on me, it was always the same expression, polite, distant, careful as if I were a neighbor's child or a friend of a friend tagging along. "Hi, Elias," she'd say with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Sometimes she didn't even say my name. Sometimes she just nodded as if I were another piece of furniture in my grandparents' home. She asked about school once, just once. I told her I had done well on a math test. She said, "That's nice then," turned back to coo over a twin who was tugging her earrings. Each time they visited, something inside me got quieter, smaller. I learned how to hold myself still so I wouldn't hope for anything. Hope is dangerous when it keeps walking you into the same wall. By the time college application season came around, the twins were bouncing and babbling and sleeping through the night. My mother's life was smooth, stable. Mine was a list of problems I tried not to share with anyone. One evening, I sat at the old wooden table in my grandparents' kitchen, filling out loan applications. My grandparents were asleep. They didn't know how bad things were. The clock ticked loudly, and every tick felt like a reminder that I was alone. I needed a co-signer. At 16, 17, 18, legally an adult emotionally scrambling, I still needed a parent. But my mother had already decided I wasn't one of her responsibilities. When I asked her if she could co-sign for me, just a signature, no money, she didn't hesitate. "Elias, you know we have to save for the twins. They'll be applying for college soon, too." They were still in kindergarten. Harry nodded beside her arms folded. "It's for the future," he added, his voice firm. My mother softened her tone as if that would make the blow land quieter. "You're older. You'll manage. You always do." She said it like a compliment. It felt like another abandonment. The only person willing to help was my uncle. He sat me down in a diner booth one cold afternoon, a laminated menu between us. He sighed, rubbed the back of his neck, and finally said, "I'll do it. But listen, I can't ever actually pay this loan. You understand?" I nodded so fast I felt dizzy. A mix of relief and humiliation washed over me. Relief that someone cared, humiliation that it wasn't my own mother. During college, I worked 2 or 3 jobs at a time, library shelving. In the mornings, cafeteria shifts; in the afternoons, tutoring high school kids in math at night. Sometimes I fell asleep face down on my desk. Sometimes I cried in the bathroom because I couldn't afford textbooks. I wanted to quit so badly, but every time I almost did, I remembered that line. "The twins deserve it more." That sentence became fuel. Sharp, bitter fuel, but fuel nonetheless. Graduation came quickly. My grandparents were there, my grandmother in a floral dress she hadn't worn in years. My grandfather with a shaky hand holding the camcorder. They cheered louder than anyone. My mother didn't call, didn't show up, didn't even acknowledge it. I pretended it didn't sting. But pain ignored is pain that festers. After graduation, adulthood slapped me hard. Rent, utilities, debt, groceries. It all piled on top of me. I lived in a tiny studio with a leaky faucet and peeling wallpaper. There were nights I ate instant noodles 3 meals in a row. There were mornings I woke up with muscle cramps from the cheap mattress on the floor. But slowly, agonizingly slowly, I climbed my way up in the company I worked for. Promotions didn't come easily, but they came because I showed up every day and pushed harder than the person next to me. I didn't have a safety net. I didn't have someone to call if I failed. The fear of falling kept me moving. Years passed. I fixed my credit. I paid down my debt. I got a proper apartment. I started making real money. I built a life that didn't depend on anyone. And then, without meaning to, without wanting to, I caught the attention of the one person I hoped never to face again. My mother. I didn't know it yet, but the moment my uncle congratulated me for my promotion, he had unknowingly set the past back in motion. When my promotion was announced internally, I told almost no one. I didn't post about it, didn't celebrate it online, didn't even tell most of my coworkers. After years of clawing my way out of a life I never asked for privacy, had become the only thing that felt truly mine. I made an exception for one person, my uncle. He had been the only adult in my family who said yes when everyone else said, "Not my problem." So when I called to tell him the news, his voice cracked with pride. I could hear him smiling through the phone. If I had known what that phone call would set in motion, I might have swallowed the good news and carried it alone. But life is cruel like that. You never see the trap until you've already stepped into it. A few weeks later, on a quiet afternoon, my doorbell rang. When I checked the peephole, my stomach dropped so fast it felt like falling. My mother stood there, and beside her, Harry. They were dressed too nicely for a casual visit. My mother's makeup was carefully done, her hair blown out. Her expression not quite a smile. Harry held himself stiffly the way people do when they're about to deliver news they know won't be well received. For a second, I froze. It felt like seeing ghosts, familiar outlines filled with a completely different kind of presence. Against my better judgment, I opened the door. My mother didn't even say hello. She stepped past me into my apartment as if she still lived here, as if she still had the right. Harry followed, closing the door behind him. I didn't invite them to sit, but they sat anyway. The entitlement hit me like humidity, thick, suffocating. "We heard about the promotion," my mother said, crossing her legs. "Your uncle told us. Quite an achievement." The way she said it flat, almost disappointed, made my jaw clench. Harry nodded, but his eyes were scanning my apartment, taking mental inventory. I said nothing. I wanted them to feel the weight of it. My mother continued, "You didn't think to share the news with us." A bitter laugh almost escaped me. Share. She hadn't shared anything with me in 17 years. She hadn't even shared a goodbye when she pushed me out of her life. I kept my voice steady. "We haven't talked in almost 2 decades. She waved a hand dismissively as though brushing away smoke. "That was your choice." "My choice," I repeated slowly, the anger already simmering. She didn't blink. "You distanced yourself after leaving the house. Instead of supporting us when we needed to focus on the twins, you took it personally." The room tilted. Gaslighting, polished smooth from years of practice, rolled off her tongue effortlessly. "You kicked me out," I said. "I was 16. "We never kicked you out," Harry cut in. "We simply explained we needed space. You chose to leave." I stared at them. For a moment, I genuinely wondered whether they believed their own revision of history, or whether rewriting it was easier on their conscience than admitting what they did. But they didn't come here to fix the past. They came for something else. I knew it the moment my mother smoothed down her skirt and inhaled sharply, as though preparing for a performance. "We're going to be honest," she said. "Things haven't been easy for us. Our business struggled the last few years. And well, the twins are applying to colleges." There it was, the real reason. Not reconciliation, not regret, not love. Money. Harry leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "It would really help if you covered their tuition, at least the first few years." I stared at them, stunned. I wasn't even sure I heard correctly. My mother added quickly, "Think of this as an opportunity to give back, after everything I've done for you." Everything she had done for me. Images flashed in my mind, the night she shut her bedroom door while I ate alone in the kitchen. The day she told me the twins deserved their resources. The year she pretended I didn't exist. A slow heat crawled up my spine. "You want me," I said quietly, "to pay for the education of 2 kids who replaced me in your life." My mother stiffened. "Elias, don't make this emotional." Harry sighed impatiently. "It's practical. You're doing well. We aren't. You're single, no dependents. And you think I owe you," I finished. Silence. My mother's eyes narrowed just slightly, a flicker of something ugly slipping through. "I raised you alone," she hissed. "I sacrificed everything for you." I felt something inside me snap. I didn't shout. I didn't need to. My voice was low, sharp, steady. "You raised me until I stopped being convenient. Then you gave the rest of your life to the twins. That was your choice. You made it every single day for 17 years. Their faces tightened, anger simmering. Harry stood up abruptly. "So that's it. You're abandoning your family." I stood as well taller than both of them, calmer than I had any right to be. "You abandoned me first." My mother's lips thinned. She grabbed her purse and stood. Fine. If that's how you want to be, Elias, then remember this moment years from now, when you realize how ungrateful you've become. I opened the door wide. Get out. They walked past me with stiff shoulders, muttering under their breath. As they reached the elevator, my mother turned back with a look I will never forget, cold, calculating, almost disappointed I hadn't fallen into their trap. When the elevator doors finally closed, the silence in my apartment was so thick it felt alive. I sank into a chair, heart-pounding, hands trembling not from fear, but from something deeper. It wasn't the confrontation that shook me. It was the realization that after everything they had done, they still believed they had the right to take from me. And this time I would not let them. For a few days after that confrontation, my apartment felt unnaturally quiet, like sound itself was afraid to make a wrong move around me. I went through my routines on autopilot: wake-up, shower, coffee, work, gym, sleep. But underneath, something heavy churned, restless and unfinished. I told myself that the visit was over, that they had gotten their answer, that surely they wouldn't push further. I should have known better. When people see you as a resource instead of a person, no is not a boundary, it's an obstacle. The emails started 3 days later. The first one came from my mother's usual address. The subject line was, "Let's talk." The body paragraphs of nostalgia mixed with guilt, stories from my childhood rewritten with a martyr's slant. I raised you alone. I sacrificed so much. I was always there for you. You owe me this one kindness. I stared at the screen, feeling something sour rise in my throat. It felt less like a message and more like she was reaching through the past, trying to drag me back into the old roles she had assigned me, her burden, her guilt, her excuse. I didn't reply. The second email came the next morning, a different tone, sharper, colder, more desperate. You've become selfish. You're forgetting everything I did for you. You're acting like you were abandoned when that's not what happened. I deleted it. The third email used a new address. The subject line, "Ungrateful children always regret it." I didn't even open it. I blocked that address too. By the fifth email, she was sending them from whatever new accounts she could create. It became a routine. I'd wake up, see another notification, block, ignore, breathe. The messages blurred together into the same chorus of accusation and self-victimization, like she was conducting her own opera of guilt. At first, I tried to shrug it off, but guilt is a poison. It doesn't need much to seep into your bloodstream. One night, I sat at my kitchen table long after midnight, my laptop glowing faintly in the dark. I opened her latest message despite myself. "I'm beginning to think you've forgotten the nights I stayed up with you when you were sick, the times I worked double shifts to buy you clothes, the meals I skipped so you wouldn't go hungry." I closed my eyes. Memories flickered. Yes, some of that was true. She had cared once. She had smiled at me, hugged me, brushed my hair out of my eyes when I couldn't sleep. But those moments were years before Harry, years before the twins, years before I became the leftover piece in her life. Guilt whispered, "Maybe you owe her a little." Pain whispered louder, "She left you," and anger roared, "She only remembers you when she needs something." I hit delete. Then for the first time I replied, not to reconcile, not to negotiate, but to remind her of reality. My message was short, calm, and devastatingly direct. I reminded her of this night I left at 16, of the fact that she never once reached out afterward, of how she refused to help me with school because the twins deserved it more, of how she watched me walk away and never came after me. And most importantly, I told her she didn't get to rewrite the past to suit her current desperation. Her response came 10 minutes later. "You're cruel, you're ungrateful, you're lying." I blocked her again. I felt lighter for one day. Then things escalated. It was around 10 a.m. when my phone started buzzing nonstop at work. Unknown number, then another unknown number, then a call from the front desk. The receptionist's voice trembled. Your mother is here." A chill ran down my spine. "She's demanding to see you," the receptionist continued. She's, refusing to leave." I stood up so quickly my chair nearly toppled over. "What is she doing?" I asked. "She's yelling about how she's your mother and you owe her. Security asked her to calm down. She isn't listening." My pulse hammered against my ribs. I told the receptionist to put her on the phone. When my mother's voice came through, it was jagged, frantic, desperate. "Elias, I know you're here. Stop hiding. I deserve to talk to you. You owe me that much." I forced my voice into something cold and controlled. "I'm not at work." She paused. "Then where are you?" "If you don't leave the building right now, I will sue you, and the company will sue you. You cannot afford either." Silence. A deep, heavy silence filled with shock. "You wouldn't," she whispered. "Try me." I meant it, every word. After a moment, someone else took the phone, the receptionist again. "She's leaving," she whispered. "Security is escorting her out." When I hung up, I stood in the hallway at work with my hands shaking. Not out of fear, but out of the horrible realization that there were no lines left she wasn't willing to cross. That night, my apartment felt too small, too dark, too vulnerable. I sat on the couch with the lights off, staring at the door, half expecting her to appear again. That's when I decided I needed a lawyer. I needed protection. I needed control over the situation before it swallowed me alive. And as I lay in bed, hours later, unable to sleep, one thought refused to leave my mind. If she could show up at my workplace, what else was she willing to do? 2 days after the incident at my workplace, I came home with my keys, already in hand, rehearsing in my head the conversation I planned to have with my lawyer the next morning. I was exhausted, running on too little sleep, too much tension. I just wanted silence. A shower. Maybe an hour where my body didn't feel like a clenched fist. Instead, when I reached the top of the stairs leading to my apartment, I froze. My mother was standing in front of my door, not knocking, not pacing, just standing still. Rigid, her eyes locked on the doormat like she'd been staring at it for so long the pattern had burned into her mind. My heart sank. I didn't speak at first. I didn't trust my voice. The hallway was narrow and dim, lit by a single flickering light that made everything feel even more surreal. Finally, I managed. "What are you doing here?" She turned sharply at the sound of my voice. Her hair was a mess, her eyes bloodshot, her face streaked with dried tears and smeared makeup. She looked unhinged in a way I had never seen before. "I've been waiting," she said. "I don't want to argue." "Well, I do." The anger in her voice made my chest tighten. I instinctively stepped back, putting distance between us. "Leave," I said firmly. "Now." She took one step toward me. "Elias, don't you dare walk away from me again." My grip tightened on my phone. "If you don't leave, I'm calling the cops." Her expression twisted rage, grief, disbelief, all knotted together into something unstable. "You would do that to your own mother. You're not acting like one." That snapped something in her. She lunged. It happened so fast I barely processed it. One moment she was standing several steps away. The next she was sprinting toward me with a sound I can only describe as primal. Her shoulder slammed into my chest and suddenly I was falling backward, my head barely missing the edge of the stair railing. My phone flew out of my hand and clattered across the floor. I hit the ground hard, my breath knocked out of me. Before I could get up, she was on me. Fists flailing nails, scratching her voice, a hoarse, furious scream. "You ruined everything. You selfish little brat. You think you're better than us. You owe me. You owe us after everything." Her blows weren't strong, but they were frantic, wild. Her hands shook with every strike. For a few awful seconds, I couldn't react. I was too stunned, too horrified. This was my mother, the woman who'd once fed me soup when I had the flu. The woman who taught me how to tie my shoes. The woman who carried me when I scraped my knees. And now she was attacking me like a stranger in an alley. When I finally managed to grab her wrists and pull her arms away, she screamed louder, thrashing like she was fighting for her life. "Let go of me, let go." "Stop," I snapped back. "You need to stop." But she kept swinging, kept kicking, kept screaming. Her voice was raw, desperate, broken in a way that scared me more than the physical attack. Then I heard footsteps running panicked. My neighbors. A door slammed open. Someone yelled, "Hey, what's going on?" Another voice shouted, "Call the police." Two neighbors rushed forward and grabbed her arms, pulling her off me. She twisted, shrieking, her voice cracking under the strain. "Let me go. He's lying. He's manipulating you. Let me go." But they held her back firmly, safely. I scrambled to my feet, my chest heaving, hands shaking uncontrollably. My heart felt like it was trying to punch its way out of my ribcage. Within minutes, the hallway filled with flashing red and blue lights. The police arrived. They separated us immediately. My mother was hysterical, crying, yelling, blaming me for everything. "He abandoned us. He owes us money. He ruined our family." Her words echoed off the walls like confessions of a person completely detached from reality. I had bruises forming on my arms, a scrape on my jaw from hitting the floor. I didn't look hurt enough for a felony charge. The officer explained it calmly as he wrote down details. "This falls under misdemeanor assault. You can press charges if you choose to." I didn't hesitate. "Yes, I want to press charges." My mother's head snapped up. Her face drained of color. "You wouldn't," she whispered, trembling. "But I would." And I did. She was handcuffed and escorted down the stairs. Even then, even while being led away, she glared at me with something between hatred and bewilderment, as if she truly couldn't understand why the child she abandoned wouldn't destroy his life for her now. Harry bailed her out the next morning. But something broke that day, and not just between her and me. According to my grandparents, Harry confronted her after the arrest, demanding the truth. She blamed me, blamed them, blamed the world. She spiraled. She screamed. She refused to take responsibility. And Harry finally saw the person she had become. He left. He took the twins. He went to stay with his parents. And for the first time in decades, my mother was truly alone. My grandparents cut ties next. They told me they'd had enough. They were done trying to keep the peace while she burned every bridge she ever touched. As for me, I filed the restraining order. My lawyer expedited everything. I packed my belongings that weekend and began searching for a new home somewhere farther away, somewhere cleaner, quieter, safer. As I folded clothes into boxes, a strange mix of emotions washed over me. Not relief, not triumph, not even anger. Just grief. Grief for the mother I thought I had. Grief for the childhood I lost. Grief for the version of her that once loved me, before life twisted something inside her. But grief is still cleaner than guilt, and for the first time, I felt free enough to feel it. In the days that followed her arrest, everything inside me felt strangely quiet. Not peaceful, just quiet in the way a storm leaves the world. Muted after tearing everything apart. I moved through my apartment like a ghost, packed boxes, filled out paperwork, spoke to my lawyer, slept badly, ate just enough to function. It wasn't until I picked up the keys to the new place, a bigger, brighter apartment across town, that something inside me finally shifted. Not joy, not pride, but something closer to release. As I walked through the empty rooms for the first time, my footsteps echoing softly across clean floors, I felt the weight of 17 years loosen its grip on my chest. This place didn't know me. It didn't know my past. It didn't hold echoes of arguments, or the memory of my mother's hands hitting my shoulders, or the sound of her screaming my name like a curse. It was mine, a blank page, a starting point that didn't include her. My lawyer called the next morning to confirm that the restraining order had been approved. When I hung up, I sat at the kitchen island of the new apartment, staring out the window at a quiet street lined with trees. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding for years. I wasn't afraid anymore. Not of her showing up, not of what she might say, not of what she might demand. Because for the first time in my life, what she wanted no longer mattered. It should have felt triumphant. It should have felt like victory. But instead, something unexpectedly heavy settled over me, an ache deep and tired. Not regret, but grief. Grief for the version of me who spent years wishing she'd come back. Grief for the child who tried to be useful enough to be loved. Grief for the boy who stood in a kitchen doorway at 16, waiting for his mother to stop him from leaving and realizing she wouldn't. Grief for a mother who existed only in the first few years of my memory and never returned. My grandparents called to check on me. They told me they were proud of the boundaries I'd finally set. They said they were sorry they hadn't seen sooner how deeply everything had wounded me. I told them it wasn't their fault. They had saved me more times than I could count. I asked about Harry and the twins. My grandparents sighed. Harry had shut down completely after what happened. He refused to talk to my mother, except through short, tense phone calls about logistics. The twins were confused and upset, but he seemed determined to protect them from whatever storm my mother was trapped in. Part of me worried for them, not because I felt brotherly affection, but because no child deserves the chaos my mother had become. Still, I knew it wasn't my place to step into their lives. They had a father. They had a future with or without my involvement. They didn't need me. And I didn't need to fix what wasn't mine to fix. 9 days after the attack, my mother tried emailing me again, using yet another new address. She wrote long paragraphs accusing me of betrayal, insisting I'd ruined her life, reminding me once more of every sacrifice she had ever made for me. She tried to guilt me, manipulate me, rewrite the past, rewrite me. I blocked the address without responding. It didn't hurt, it didn't sting, it didn't even make me angry. It made me tired, and strangely, relieved. Because I realized in that moment that she did not have the power to define me anymore. Her narrative wasn't mine. Her guilt wasn't mine. Her pain wasn't mine. Her chaos ended with her, not with me. On the first night in my new home, I stood on the balcony overlooking the street. The air was cool against my skin. A few windows across the road glowed yellow, soft, and warm. Somewhere below, someone was laughing. A dog barked in the distance. Life was happening everywhere around me, indifferent to the wreckage I had just crawled out of. I closed my eyes and let the night settle around me. I thought about the past, about the little boy who once believed that love meant holding on no matter the cost. And then I thought about the man I was now, who finally understood that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let go. Let go of the mother who left me long before I ever walked out the door. Let go of the guilt she taught me to carry. Let go of the hope that she would someday undo what she had done. Because letting go wasn't giving up, it was freedom. And standing there breathing in the quiet, I realized something simple yet life-changing. I didn't need her apology anymore. The closure I'd been searching for all my life didn't come from her. It came from choosing myself for once, choosing peace, choosing to step into a life that wasn't built from scraps of someone else's decisions. For the first time, the future felt open, not guaranteed, not perfect, but mine. And that was enough.